Alright, Sicily II, here we go. Already all set up and ready to go. I'm going with the historical setup. Very interested in going with the free setup, maybe in a second playthrough. Potentially exploring some of these northern landing areas and see what changes that would make to the campaign. But for now, we'll go from the historical setup and see where that takes us. I'm just going to do a brief intro here, I guess, of both sides, kind of their intentions from the start, review some of their forces, and cover off some of the rules of the game as well. There's a lot of naval units involved, some off-map boxes, floating forces that need to be brought onto the map, lots of landing craft and different things of that ilk. So lots to cover here. Hopefully this is an interesting campaign. If the Germans can mount a counterattack, it could be a very short game if it succeeds, but that's unlikely. But we'll touch on that when we get into the German situation. So we will check in with some of the game rules quick here and go over some of the options I'm going to be playing with as well. So, alright, let's get started. Alright, so just taking a brief look at the rulebook here, I'm going to go over some of the optional rules I'm going to be using, which are all related to the air campaign. I'm going to be using these ground strike markers and the ground strike rule to limit the amount of attacking barrages, so attacks by air forces onto enemy combat units that are allowed in each turn. So both sides will roll a die to decide how many ground support missions they are allowed to use during a turn. That's going to allow me to use the air forces more historically on their intended targets of ports and in terms of the Axis attacks on the naval capacity of the Allies, and try and be a little more focused on some fringe aspects of OCS that I don't really always look at. I tend to use my air forces, like many players I'm sure, just as a battering ram that does not cost me supply points. But this should make me explore some more options in terms of attacking ports, trying to destroy some naval units, which I'm not familiar with the naval aspect of the game at all. So give me an opportunity to refocus and maybe learn some different ways to approach air forces in OCS. So I'm also going to be using the slow refit to limit the refits of planes by the Allies as well. That should maybe give the Germans more opportunity to effectively use their ground strikes when they become available. If we only have, say, one fighter active on an airfield covering the Allied positions, the Germans, who have a smaller air force, could potentially knock that unit out and actually have some effect in their barrages and not be in a patrol zone or get intercepted, anything like that. And strategic bombers as well. It seems silly to use strategic bombers to bomb a 3-1-2 coastal division. Well, maybe a coastal division makes sense, or defensive position, but it just seems silly to mass these giant strategic bombers against small targets on the map. They have bigger targets and should maybe be used as such. So I will be playing with that rule as well. So I don't know if there's anything else I really need to cover in this at the moment. I'll kind of talk about more rules in the game as they come up during play. So, but I wanted to start with that so we knew where we were standing. So, all right, now we will talk about the Allied positions. All right, so here we are on the Americans' initial landing beaches between Licata and Gela, and a little bit over into the more open beaches here as well. Very large landing force with a wide-ranging front here. Going to have to be very careful that we defend these positions well. Trying to move up to some of these mountains might be key in preventing a German counterattack. We can see here that the Hermann Göring Panzer Division is ready to pounce. So we have to be very cautious of that. I haven't made determination of mode that I'm starting in for some of these units, so that may change as I actually get into the game. I'm just not that familiar with the situation yet, so I'm kind of playing that one by ear. But these hexes here are going to have to roll on the amphibious landing table to determine whether they take any losses. and what does arrive successfully on the beaches here. It should be decent. I don't anticipate them losing a lot, but we'll see what happens. We also have 82nd Airborne here landing at in support of Jayla. Those units could scatter as well and suffer losses. There's a decent amount of open terrain for them to land in. So again, hoping of success there. In terms of the American goals, their initial goal will be fortifying a beachhead here, building up some supply, and then fanning out and trying to, well, eliminate the defenders. But in terms of more strategic goal, Palermo is our target. Palermo, and I think cutting the highway between Messina and Palermo. We want to try and pocket as many German and Italian units into western Sicily as possible. So we'll see how successful we can be with that. But eliminating that highway, linking the two sides of the map, could be very key in that. The reason for doing so is once we get into August, the Germans start gaining victory points as they pull units off, and the longer they can delay their complete withdrawal. So if we can trap some units here, that will certainly speed up our attack towards Messina, and trap some German units and some victory points, potential victory points on the map here. The Germans are going to have to be very cautious of that and make sure they keep that highway open so they can quickly haul ass out of town if they need to. So I think we'll somewhat support the flank here. Well, we'll need to support a flank here as well. As we advance towards Palermo, we'll need to guard here, and hopefully the British can do that as well around Mount Etna in holding off any counterattacks, maybe down this highway here from the Germans and into these positions. Again, I'm not very familiar with the situation. It's my first time playing, so some specifics of where those battles may happen or what this situation might look like is probably completely inaccurate to the things I'm saying now. So we will find out in due time. On to the British. Their landing positions are here, here, and here, and here as well. And then they have the 1st Airborne landing at positions here near Syracuse. The British targets are up the coastline here. Their ultimate target is Messina, but realistically Catania is probably going to be where most of their fighting happens, and in and around Mount Etna. This is going to be a fist fight for a long time, I'm sure. It might move quickly at the start as they clear some of the Italians out of these positions. They need to successfully capture the Prima Sole bridge there to start mounting their attack towards Catania. If the Germans and the Italians can kind of hold behind these rivers, they may find some early success in delaying that fight there and costing the Brits supply and some manpower. We, again, as the defender, like in my Baltic Gap game, I have to be careful to not sacrifice too many steps. So, very difficult balance to find there. But yeah, this is going to be a slog, I'm sure. Just fist fighting for Catania along these roads. Mountainous terrain, some clear along the coast here, but I'm sure those will be very strongly garrisoned as the British approach. I don't think there's a lot of opportunity for German counterattack in this area. The terrain is quite shitty. So maybe in this open area here we could see something, but again, worried about force preservation, whether a German counterattack is even worth the risks. So that is it for our allies. I think, as I said in the intro, they have the same end goal of conquering the island, but these units cannot fight together. They can fight in defenses together, but they cannot attack together. So I think we're going to keep them as far away from each other as possible. And Montgomery, nobody likes Montgomery anyways, so the Americans should just stay away from his forces and keep to themselves. So, all right, the Germans and the Italians. They have a lot of force over here in the west. Not a lot, but any amount of force is a lot for a defender with these thinly defended lines. So I think we'll need to divert some of these forces to the flanks here, to Palermo, maybe even pull some over this direction should we need some support. The Germans don't have a lot of force all told. They do have some very strong formations though, with some of these Kampfgrups they have around the map. Again, Hermann Göring, Panzer Division there as well, so they may not have a lot, but they can pack a punch. The dilemma I'm finding in thinking about what the Germans are going to do is it even worth attempting a counterattack? They could so thin their forces by a failed counterattack that the game will essentially be over before it starts if we attempt counterattacks in this first turn or two. It's a high risk, high reward gamble, but it could end up for being a dull campaign if that's the case. We'll have to see how it goes. Difficulty in that as well is you'll need a double turn on the first initiative roll. The Allies go first in the campaign game, but if we can get the double turn, we could seriously cause some problems for the American forces here, especially with Hermann Göring and the Kampfgrups attacking into the opens around Gela and Licata here. So I don't know what to do. It's going to be difficult to stage those units in an effort to, not knowing whether we get the double turn or not, trying to counter on their first turn of a possible double turn, but also leaving themselves in a strong enough position should they not get that double turn to not be overrun and surrounded and pocketed into their positions here. So I don't really know what to do. I think I'm just rambling at the moment. So I think that is it. If anybody has any questions about the game or some comments about my strategies and what I should be doing in this game, please feel free to let me know. But that is it. I'm excited to get started, and hopefully I'll have these videos coming for you shortly of the first couple turns here. So, alright, that's it, that's all. Thanks everybody.